I'm Denver, 28 years old, and yesterday I signed a $300,000 software development contract after years of struggle. Finally, I could afford my own place and start building wealth. Then my phone rang. Dad's voice was tense. Family meeting. Tonight. Urgent. I had no idea that within hours he'd be demanding I use my hard-earned money for a down payment on my brother's house. The look in his eyes when I refused still haunts me. If you've ever had family try to cash in on your success, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries with toxic family members. Growing up, I was always in my brother Marcus's shadow. He was 3 years older, more outgoing, and somehow perfect in our parents' eyes, despite his constant poor decisions. Marcus was the star athlete who got trophies displayed prominently in the living room. I was the quiet kid who got good grades but whose academic achievements barely warranted a nod from mom and dad. Our childhood home in suburban Michigan was comfortable but not luxurious. Dad worked as a sales manager at a car dealership, and mom was an elementary school teacher. They weren't wealthy, but they managed to provide everything Marcus needed or wanted. I learned early on that my needs came second. When Marcus wanted expensive basketball shoes, Dad made it happen. When I needed a new calculator for advanced math, I had to save my lawn mowing money. Your brother has natural talent that needs nurturing, Dad would say. You just need to apply yourself more. High school continued this pattern. Marcus was prom king, dated the most popular girls, and got away with mediocre grades because he was focusing on sports. I joined the computer club, spent lunch periods in the library, and maintained a 4.0 GPA, hoping my parents would notice. College was where our paths truly diverged. Marcus got into State University with a partial athletic scholarship, which my parents supplemented generously. They bought him a used car, so he could focus on training rather than working. Meanwhile, I earned an academic scholarship to Tech Institute, but still had to cover living expenses. Throughout college, I worked 3 jobs morning shifts at the campus cafeteria, weekend help desk, support, and freelance coding projects at night. I shared a tiny apartment with 2 other students to save money. My routine was classes, work, study, sleep, repeat. Weekends, when I called home, my parents would gush about Marcus's parties and games before asking perfunctorily how my studies were going. Marcus partied through college, switching majors 3 times before settling on communications. He graduated with mediocre grades and mountains of debt from his college lifestyle. I graduated with honors in computer science, with minimal debt, thanks to my scholarship and constant work. After college, our different approaches to life became even more apparent. Marcus expected to land a high-paying job immediately based on his people skills. He bounced between sales positions, never staying longer than a year, always quitting because management didn't appreciate his talents. Despite his unstable employment, he maintained an expensive apartment, leased a luxury car, and took lavish vacations he couldn't afford. I started at the bottom, taking an entry-level coding job at a small startup. The pay was minimal, but I saw it as an investment in my future. I continued living frugally in a studio apartment, taking public transportation and cooking at home. Every spare dollar went toward building my emergency fund and paying off my small student loans. 3 years into my career, I met Eliza at a tech conference. She was brilliant, kind, and understood my drive. Unlike my family, she valued my dedication and supported my ambitions. When I told her about my dream of eventually starting my own development company, she didn't dismiss it as unrealistic. Instead, she asked thoughtful questions about my business plan. Eliza saw my potential when my family didn't. On nights when I doubted myself, she'd remind me of how far I'd come already. Your determination is your superpower, she'd tell me. With her encouragement, I started taking on freelance projects in addition to my day job. My best friend Jason was another pillar of support. We'd been friends since college, and he understood my family dynamics better than anyone. Your parents don't see your worth because they're blinded by their golden child syndrome, he told me once. But that doesn't diminish what you're accomplishing. The breakthrough came when Victor, the CEO of a mid-sized tech company, hired me for a small project. Impressed with my work ethic and code quality, he offered me more responsibilities. You have talent and grit, he said. That's a rare combination. Over the next 2 years, I took on increasingly complex projects for Victor's company while building my skills and reputation. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. A major financial tech company needed a specialized security system developed. Victor recommended me to lead the project. I worked 80-hour weeks for months, pouring everything I had into creating the best possible system. The client was thrilled with the results and offered me a $300,000 contract for a year of ongoing development and maintenance. The day I signed the contract was surreal. After years of struggle, sacrifice, and doubt, I had finally achieved financial security. Eliza took me out to celebrate at an upscale restaurant I'd never been able to afford before. To your hard work finally paying off, she toasted, her eyes shining with pride. I couldn't stop smiling. I can finally afford a down payment on a decent house, I said. No more paying rent. You deserve this, Denver, she said, squeezing my hand. I'm so proud of you. We were halfway through dinner when my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. Normally I heard from him only on holidays or when he needed tech support. I hesitated before answering. Denver, we need to have a family meeting tonight, he said without preamble. It's urgent. What's going on? I asked, immediately concerned. Is everyone okay? Everyone's fine, he said curtly. Just be at the house by 7. The call ended before I could ask more questions. Eliza saw my expression and set down her fork. Your dad? She asked. I nodded. Family meeting tonight. He says it's urgent. That's strange timing, she said cautiously. Do you think they heard about your contract? The thought hadn't occurred to me, but as soon as she said it, a knot formed in my stomach. The timing was suspicious. I hadn't told my parents about the contract yet, but Marcus was connected to several people in the local tech community. Word could have reached him. I guess I'll find out, I said, trying to shake off my unease. Let's not let it ruin our celebration. But the mood had shifted. As I paid the bill, I couldn't help wondering what awaited me at my parents' house. I drove to my parents' suburban home with a growing sense of unease. As I pulled into the driveway, I immediately noticed Marcus's BMW parked next to Dad's new Audi. For people who frequently complained about money problems, my parents and brother certainly didn't hesitate to spend on themselves. The modest 2-story house looked the same as always, though the garden I used to maintain during college visits was now overgrown. I'd spent countless weekends fixing things around this house, repairing the deck, painting rooms, upgrading the bathroom, all free labor that was expected rather than appreciated. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell instead of using my old key. Mom answered, her face lighting up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Denver. Come in, come in. Everyone's waiting in the dining room. The formal dining room was rarely used except for holidays and special occasions. My stomach tightened further. Mom had prepared a full dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, as if this were a celebration. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking important in his button-up shirt. Marcus slouched in his usual spot, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up when I entered, giving me a smirk rather than a proper greeting. The man of the hour arrives. Marcus set his tone somewhere between teasing and resentful. Denver. Dad stood to shake my hand formally. Glad you could make it on such short notice. I took my childhood seat across from Marcus. You said it was urgent. What's going on? Mom bustled in with the last of the food. Let's eat first. No need to rush into serious talk with empty stomachs. Dinner began with awkward small talk. Mom asked about Eliza, though she'd only met her twice and couldn't remember what she did for work. Dad inquired about that computer job, clearly having paid little attention to my career progression over the years. So Marcus finally said, setting down his fork with a deliberate motion, heard you landed quite the payday. 300 grand. Not bad for playing with computers all day. There it was. I kept my expression neutral. The contract is for complex security system development. It's the result of years of building expertise and relationships in the industry. Dad beamed, suddenly looking more proud than I had seen him in years. That's my boy. Always knew you'd make something of yourself eventually. Eventually. As if my previous accomplishments counted for nothing. We're very proud, Mom added, patting my hand. You've worked so hard. Their sudden pride felt hollow after years of indifference. I took a sip of water, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dad cleared his throat. exchanging glances with Mom. Son, now that you've finally achieved financial success, we need to discuss your responsibilities to the family. And there it was. What responsibilities would those be? I asked carefully. Dad leaned forward, hands clasped in front of him, in what I recognized as his sales pitch posture. Family takes care of family. That's always been our way. Mom nodded along, her expression earnest. We've always supported each other. I almost laughed at the revisionist history, but kept my composure. How exactly do you see that working? Marcus jumped in. Look, bro, I'm in a tight spot right now. The real estate market is crazy, and I need to get established with a house before prices climb even more. But with my credit situation and saving for a down payment. What your brother is trying to say, Dad interrupted, is that this is a perfect opportunity for you to help family. Now that you're doing well financially, you can give back by helping with a down payment for Marcus's house. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. You want me to use my contract money to buy Marcus a house? Not buy it outright, Dad clarified, as if that made it reasonable. Just the down payment to get him started. 20% on a decent place would be around $60,000. Surely you can spare that much from your windfall. Windfall. As if I'd won the lottery rather than earned every penny through dedication and sacrifice. Plus, Marcus added, I've got some credit card debt that's killing me with interest. Another $15,000 would clear that up and let me start fresh. I looked around the table waiting for someone to say this was all an elaborate joke. No one did. You're seriously asking me to give Marcus $75,000? I finally managed. Mom looked pained. Denver, don't think of it as giving. It's investing in family. When I was struggling through college, working 3 jobs, was anyone investing in me? I asked quietly. Dad waved dismissively. That was different. You had scholarships. Partial scholarships, I corrected. And I worked constantly to cover the rest while Marcus got a free ride. Your brother had sports commitments, Mom said defensively. He couldn't work like you could. Marcus smirked. Not everyone's cut out for the grind life, bro. Some of us have social skills to maintain. I thought about all the times I'd asked for help the semester my laptop died before finals, the month I got sick and couldn't work. The car repairs I couldn't afford and was told to figure it out myself. Meanwhile, Marcus's ongoing financial support was simply expected. Why does Marcus need such an expensive house anyway? I asked. Why not start with something modest like I'm planning to do? Dad scoffed. Your brother has an image to maintain for his career. He can't live in some starter home. And what about my career? My future? My plans for the money I earned? Don't be selfish, Denver, Mom said softly. Family comes first. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, the pain of never being enough, never being valued. Memories flashed through my mind, Marcus getting a car for graduation while I got a card. My parents attending every one of Marcus's games but missing my academic competitions. The constant refrain that I should be more like your brother, despite his poor choices. I need to think about this, I said finally, standing up. The dinner was barely half eaten, but I'd lost my appetite. What's there to think about? Marcus demanded. You've got the money, I need it. Simple. Dad nodded. We expect you'll do the right thing. You could transfer the first $20,000 this week to show good faith. The audacity was breathtaking. I looked at my family, these people who had consistently placed me last, now expecting me to financially rescue the golden child from his own poor decisions. I'll be in touch, I said neutrally, heading for the door. Denver, Mom called after me, we're counting on you. Don't disappoint the family. I walked out without another word, my mind reeling from what had just happened. The family that had never been there for me now saw me as their personal ATM. Something had to change. And as I drove away from my childhood home, I realized it would have to be me who changed it. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I finally made it home, Eliza was waiting, concern etched on her face. How bad was it? She asked, leading me to the couch. I recounted the dinner conversation, my voice hollow. As I spoke, Eliza's expression shifted from concern to outrage. They can't be serious, she said when I finished. $75,000 after they've never supported you. They're completely serious, I confirmed. Dad already wants the first $20,000 this week. Eliza shook her head. Denver, this isn't normal. You know that right, families don't do this to each other. Deep down, I knew she was right, but years of conditioning had normalized my family's behavior. Maybe I should help a little, I said uncertainly. They are family. Being family doesn't entitle them to your money, she said firmly. Especially when they've never been there for you financially. Her words made me pause. Had they ever helped me financially? I tried to recall any instance of meaningful support and came up empty. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more I realized something troubling. I think I've been supporting them for years, I said slowly. The next morning, I decided to investigate exactly how much I'd been giving my family. I opened my financial tracking app and created a new category, Family Support. Then I began combing through years of transactions. The results were staggering. I'd been paying the family cell phone plan since college 5 lines, including Marcus's girlfriend costing me over $200 monthly. I paid for the family Netflix, Hulu, and Spotify accounts. I'd sent emergency money to Marcus, at least twice yearly amounts, ranging from $500 to $2,000, none of which had ever been repaid, despite promises. When Dad's car broke down last year, I'd covered the $1,500 repair bill. When Mom needed dental work not covered by insurance, I'd sent $3,000. I'd paid for home repairs, holiday gifts, and countless dinners out when visiting. In total, I'd given my family over $40,000 in the past 5 years alone, while I was struggling to establish myself financially. I called Jason, needing perspective from someone who knew my family dynamics. "I'm not surprised," he said, after I explained the situation. "But there's something you should know. Marcus has been talking about you at social gatherings." "What's he saying?" I asked, though I could guess. "That you've become arrogant since getting into tech, that you think you're better than everyone, that you're selfish with your money." Jason paused. "Denver, he's been bad-mouthing you to anyone who'll listen, even while you've been helping them financially." The betrayal stung. Why wouldn't he tell me this to my face? "Because then you might stop paying for his lifestyle," Jason said bluntly. "Look, have you ever considered that your family sees you as their backup plan? Their safety net?" The question hit home. I remembered Dad's dismissive attitude toward my career until it started making serious money. I recalled Mom's constant reminders that family helps family whenever they needed something, but never when I did. My investigation continued. I called my old university's financial aid office claiming I needed records for tax purposes. What I learned confirmed my suspicions. While I'd worked through college, my parents had taken out additional plus loans for Marcus's education loans they were still paying off due to his excessive spending during school. One afternoon, I drove past Marcus's apartment complex. Despite his claims of financial hardship, he lived in one of the most expensive buildings in town. His BMW was parked outside, recently detailed. Through the lobby windows, I could see him crossing to the elevator, shopping bags from designer stores in hand. My brother wasn't struggling. He was living beyond his means and expecting family to cover the difference. Family meaning me. I arranged lunch with Victor, my mentor and boss, not to discuss work, but to seek advice. Victor had built his success from nothing and maintained healthy family relationships along the way. "Family dynamics and money are complicated," Victor said after hearing my story. "But there's a difference between supporting family and enabling destructive behavior." "How do I tell the difference?" I asked. "Ask yourself, am I helping them grow, or am I helping them avoid consequences?" Victor stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "If your brother never faces the results of his financial choices, he'll never learn to make better ones." "My parents will say I'm abandoning family," I said. "Boundaries aren't abandonment," Victor replied. "They're actually a form of respect for yourself and for them. You're saying you believe they're capable of handling their own lives." That evening, I created a spreadsheet documenting every dollar I'd given my family. I listed all the times I'd asked for help and been refused. I calculated what I could have done with that money if I'd invested it instead. Then I made a decision that would change everything. It was time to stop being my family's ATM. Not just refusing their demand for Marcus's house down payment, but cutting off all financial support I'd been providing without recognition or gratitude. It wouldn't be easy. They would resist guilt trip and possibly even threaten to cut ties. But as I stared at the evidence of years of one-sided giving, I realized something important: if their love was conditional on my financial support, it wasn't really love at all. For 3 days following the dinner, I ignored calls and texts from my family. My voicemail filled with increasingly urgent messages from Dad. Denver, call me back. We need to discuss the transfer details. Son, your mother is worried. Why aren't you responding? This silence is very disrespectful after everything we've done for you. Mom's approach was subtler, but no less manipulative. Honey, please call. Your father is upset. We've always been there for you. Why are you shutting us out now? Is this how you repay your family's love and support? The last message made me laugh bitterly. What love and support were they referring to exactly? Marcus was more direct. Dude, stop being a jerk. Mom's crying because of you. Must be nice to forget where you came from once you get some cash. I told everyone, you were always the selfish one. On day 4, the extended family joined in. Aunt Susan called to check if everything was okay, while really fishing for information. Uncle Dave texted that family disagreements shouldn't last this long. Cousin Beth posted a vague Facebook status about ungrateful relatives who forget blood is thicker than water. The coordination made it clear my parents were rallying the family against me. I blocked several numbers after receiving particularly nasty messages from relatives who hadn't bothered to contact me in years. A week after the dinner, Jason called with disturbing news. Marcus is telling people you promised to buy him a house, he said. He's been house hunting with realtors, saying his brother is providing the down payment. He's what I couldn't believe the audacity. Yeah, he even told mutual friends he's having a housewarming party next month. Denver, he's acting like it's a done deal. I was seething. Not only were they demanding my money, but Marcus was already spending it in his mind and creating social expectations I'd be blamed for disappointing. That evening, as I was discussing the situation with Eliza, a sharp knock interrupted us. Through the peephole, I saw my parents and Marcus standing in the hallway. The ambush had begun. I opened the door, but blocked the entrance. This isn't a good time. Make it a good time. Dad pushed past me into my apartment. Mom and Marcus followed. Dad looked around my modest apartment with barely concealed disdain. This is exactly why you should help your brother. You're living like a college student when you could afford better. I'm saving for my future, I said evenly. Something Marcus might consider trying. Marcus scoffed. Some of us have real expenses. Like what I challenged. Designer clothes, luxury car leases, expensive restaurants. I have an image to maintain for work, he shot back. What work, I asked. You've changed jobs 3 times this year. Dad interrupted, clearly impatient with the sibling squabble. We're here to discuss your contribution to Marcus's house. Have you made the transfer yet? The directness was stunning. No pretense, no subtlety. Just the raw expectation that I would hand over my money. No, I said firmly. And I'm not going to. The room went silent. Mom's face crumpled in theatrical disappointment. Marcus's eyes narrowed dangerously. Dad's complexion reddened. What do you mean you're not going to? Dad demanded. I mean exactly that. I'm not giving Marcus money for a house or to pay off his credit cards. Marcus stepped forward. After everything this family has done for you? What exactly has this family done for me? I asked quietly. When I needed help with college, I was told to figure it out myself. When I needed support starting my career, you all dismissed my work as playing with computers. Now that I'm successful, suddenly I have responsibilities to family. Mom's voice trembled. We gave you a home, an education. You gave me the basics parents are supposed to provide, I interrupted. Meanwhile, I've been paying this family's phone bills, streaming services, and emergency expenses for years, without a single thank you. Dad waved dismissively. Those are minor expenses. We're talking about something important here. Important to whom I challenged. My financial goals aren't less important than Marcus's. Your brother needs this, Mom insisted. His credit isn't good enough to get a decent mortgage rate. And whose fault is that his spending habits and job hopping created his credit problems? Why should I bail him out? Marcus stepped closer, his face inches from mine. Because that's what family does. Or have you forgotten that, now that you've got some tech money, family supports each other reciprocally, I corrected. When have any of you supported me when I needed it? The silence was telling. Dad changed tactics. Denver, be reasonable. We're not asking for all your money. Just enough to help your brother get established. I'm using my contract money to establish myself, I replied. I'm buying my own house, investing for retirement, and building my business. Those are my priorities. So, your own comfort comes before your family's needs, Mom asked tearfully. Marcus doesn't need a luxury house. He wants one. There's a difference. Marcus sneered. Easy for you to say from your ivory tower. I laughed incredulously. Ivory tower? I worked 80-hour weeks for months to earn this contract. I lived on ramen and worked 3 jobs through college, while you partied on Mom and Dad's dime. Don't talk to me about ivory towers. Dad's patience snapped. Enough. This isn't a request, Denver. This is a family obligation. Either you help your brother, or what I challenged. His eyes were cold, or you're not part of this family anymore. The ultimatum hung in the air. Mom gasped, though, whether in genuine shock or for dramatic effect I couldn't tell. Marcus looked smugly satisfied, as if Dad had finally played the trump card that would force my compliance. But instead of fear or capitulation, I felt something unexpected: relief. If your definition of family is a one-way financial relationship where I give and you take, I said slowly, then maybe I don't want to be part of that family. Dad's face went from red to purple. You ungrateful. I think you should leave now, I said, moving to open the door. I have work tomorrow. This isn't over, Dad warned, as they reluctantly moved toward the exit. Actually, it is, I replied. Please don't come back unless you're ready to have a relationship that isn't based on what I can give you financially. As the door closed behind them, I leaned against it, heart pounding, but mind clearer than it had been in years. The threat of family estrangement was supposed to be their nuclear option, but it had only confirmed what I needed to do. After my family left, I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, processing what had just happened. Eliza sat beside me, holding my hand in silent support. He threatened to cut me off from the family, I said, finally, my voice hollow. How does that make you feel? She asked gently. I considered the question carefully. Sad, angry, but also relieved. Like maybe this forced confrontation was inevitable. Eliza nodded. Sometimes relationships reach a breaking point where you can't continue the old patterns anymore. That night, I barely slept. Memories of my childhood and young adulthood played through my mind, all the times I'd been overlooked, undervalued, and expected to give without receiving. By morning, I wasn't just sad or angry. I was resolved. I need to make some changes, I told Eliza over breakfast. Real concrete changes to how I interact with my family. She squeezed my hand. I'll support whatever you decide. My first step was scheduling an appointment with a financial advisor. Janet Wilson had been recommended by Victor, and her straightforward approach was exactly what I needed. Let me understand, she said after I explained my situation. You've been financially supporting your family while struggling yourself, and now that you're successful, they want substantial amounts of your contract money. That's right, I confirmed. And they expect it as an entitlement, not a request. Janet reviewed my financial documents thoughtfully. Denver, even with your new contract, giving your brother $75,000 would significantly impact your financial goals. You'd be delaying your own house purchase and retirement savings to fund his lifestyle. That's what I thought, I said. Furthermore, she continued, these ongoing expenses for family phone bills, streaming services, regular loans that aren't repaid, they've been a substantial drain on your resources. Nearly 15% of your income in recent years. Seeing the percentage quantified was sobering. What would you recommend? From a purely financial perspective, eliminating these subsidies would significantly improve your financial health, she said. But I recognize family relationships are complicated. They're threatening to cut me off if I don't pay, I admitted. Janet's expression softened slightly. Then perhaps the question becomes, what kind of relationship are you preserving by continuing to pay? Is it healthy? Is it reciprocal? Her questions echoed in my mind as I left her office. What exactly was I preserving with my financial support? Not love that should be unconditional. Not mutual aid. It only flowed one way. Not even gratitude. They saw my contributions as obligation, not generosity. That afternoon, I developed a methodical plan to sever the financial ties with my family. First, I called the cell phone company. I need to remove 4 lines from my account. I told the representative. I'll keep only my personal line. The removed lines will lose service at the end of the current billing cycle, the rep warned. Would you like us to notify those users? Yes, I said firmly. Please let them know they have 2 weeks to establish their own service. Next, I logged into my streaming accounts and removed all family profiles, changing the passwords afterward. I canceled automatic payments for my parents' internet and cable services. I called their utility companies and removed myself as the secondary payer on their accounts. As I systematically cut each financial tie, I felt a mixture of guilt and liberation. This wasn't about punishment. It was about establishing necessary boundaries. I drafted a formal email to my family, explaining my decision. After careful consideration, I've decided to stop providing financial support to the family. This includes the cell phone plan streaming services, utility payments, and any future loans or gifts. This isn't a decision I've made lightly, but one that's necessary for my financial and emotional well-being. I value family relationships based on mutual respect and care, not financial transactions. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship on those terms when you're ready. Denver. I hesitated before hitting send, then remembered Dad's ultimatum and Marcus's entitled demands. I clicked send and exhaled slowly. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone lit up with angry calls and texts accusing me of cruelty, selfishness, and betrayal. I silenced notifications and focused on completing my plan. I contacted my landlord to change the locks on my apartment, explaining that family members who had previously had access were no longer welcome. I set up mail forwarding to a new P.O. box to prevent them from accessing my personal information. I updated my emergency contact information at work from Mom to Eliza. Jason called after receiving a furious message from Marcus. He's telling everyone you've lost your mind, Jason reported. That fame and money have changed you. Does he mention the $75,000 he demanded? I asked. Conveniently, no, Jason confirmed. Look, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, but are you okay? This can't be easy. The truth was, it wasn't easy. Despite years of unequal treatment, they were still my family. The cultural programming that family comes first ran deep. But another voice was growing stronger, the one that said I deserved better than to be valued only for financial support. I'm managing, I told Jason, taking it day by day. Recognizing I needed professional help processing these changes, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Rachel Chen, a therapist specializing in family dynamics. What you're describing is financial abuse, Dr. Chen said during our first session. Your family has created a one-sided dynamic where your worth is measured by what you provide materially. But isn't family supposed to help each other? I asked. Healthy families do help each other, she agreed. But the key word is each other. It's reciprocal, not exploitative. And help is offered freely, not demanded, or extracted through guilt and manipulation. Over the following weeks, Dr. Chen helped me understand the dysfunctional patterns in my family relationships and develop strategies for maintaining boundaries. Guilt will be their primary weapon, she warned. Remember that healthy boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary for authentic relationships. Meanwhile, I channeled my energy into positive directions. I threw myself into the contract work, exceeding client expectations. I began house hunting, focusing on modest properties within my budget, rather than stretching for status like Marcus would have. Each day, without my family's financial demands, felt lighter than the last. I was reconstructing my identity, not as the overlooked younger brother, obligated to support everyone else, but as an independent adult, making conscious choices about my resources and relationships. The path wasn't straight or easy. Some days the guilt was overwhelming, especially when distant relatives or family friends reached out to tell me how much my parents were suffering because of my abandonment. On those days, Eliza and Jason reminded me of the truth. I hadn't abandoned anyone. I'd simply stopped accepting mistreatment. Your worth isn't measured by what you give. Eliza would remind me. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you provide. Slowly, I began to believe her. The family reaction to my financial cutoff was swift and volatile. Dad left voicemails vacillating between rage. "You've made the biggest mistake of your life and attempts at authoritarian control. Call me immediately to discuss reversing this childish decision." Mom's messages were pure emotional manipulation, tearful pleas about how they might lose their internet connection, how Marcus was devastated, how everyone was talking about what a terrible son I'd become. Marcus's approach was more direct harassment. He sent dozens of texts daily ranging from guilt trips to outright threats. "Hope you're happy knowing Mom cries herself to sleep," one read. Another, "Everyone knows what you're doing. Good luck having friends in this town after this." And finally, "You'll regret choosing money over family. Trust me." I documented everything, but didn't respond. Dr. Chen had advised maintaining communication silence until the initial emotional storm passed. "They're experiencing withdrawal from their financial dependency on you," she explained. "Like any withdrawal, it will peak before it improves." 2 weeks after the cutoff, Jason reported that Marcus had been forced to downgrade his phone to a basic plan. "He's telling everyone it's temporary, until you come to your senses," Jason said. "But he's definitely feeling the pinch." A month in, Mom's tactics shifted from tearful manipulation to martyrdom. She began posting on social media about standing strong through family trials and how a mother's love never wavers even when tested. The posts never mentioned me by name, but were clearly designed to rally sympathy from her social circle. The most surprising development came 6 weeks after the cutoff. Dad's business associate mentioned during a networking event that my parents were struggling with unexpected bills. "Your dad seemed really shocked by their utility costs," he told me. "Said something about never realizing what internet and cable actually cost these days." The comment confirmed what I'd suspected: my parents had taken my financial contributions entirely for granted, never even registering the extent of my support until it vanished. Marcus faced the most immediate consequences. Without the safety net of family meaning me to bail him out, his precarious financial house of cards began collapsing. He was forced to trade in his leased BMW for a used Honda. His girlfriend, accustomed to the lifestyle my subsidies had partially funded, broke up with him shortly after. The extended family largely took my parents' side, with a notable exception. Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother, called me out of the blue. "I heard about the situation with your parents and Marcus," he said. "Wanted you to know not everyone thinks you're wrong." Surprised by the support, I asked what he meant. "Your dad did the same thing to me years ago," Uncle Robert explained. "When my business took off, suddenly I was expected to fund family vacations, loan money to cousins, chip in for renovations on the family cabin I rarely used. When I finally said no, I was the villain." "How did you handle it?" I asked. "Set boundaries and stuck to them," he said. "It was hard. Didn't speak to your dad for nearly 2 years. But eventually he came around when he realized the money train wasn't coming back." Uncle Robert's experience gave me hope that eventually my family might adjust to our new reality. In the meantime, I focused on building healthy relationships elsewhere. A new friendship with Caleb, a developer I met through Victor, showed me what healthy family dynamics could look like. Caleb invited me to a family barbecue where I witnessed his parents taking genuine interest in each child's life without favoritism, offering help without creating dependency, and expressing pride without conditions. "Your family seems so normal," I commented on the drive home. Caleb laughed. "They have their quirks, but yeah, they're pretty great. Everyone chips in according to their ability. Everyone gets supported when they need it. Basic stuff, really." Basic to him, revolutionary to me. The contrast between Caleb's family and mine was stark. In his family, love wasn't a transaction. Support wasn't a one-way street. Achievements were celebrated without immediately being converted into obligations. Meanwhile, my professional life thrived without the constant drain of family financial demands. I exceeded the client's expectations on the contract work, leading to discussions about an extended engagement. I began mentoring junior developers, finding satisfaction in supporting others' growth. 3 months after the cutoff, the family pressure campaign reached its peak. Marcus created a family group chat excluding me, but accidentally added me so I'd see their discussion of my mental health issues and money-induced paranoia. Dad showed up at my workplace unannounced, causing an uncomfortable scene that ended only when security escorted him out. Mom recruited family friends to check on me, with thinly veiled attempts to guilt me into reconciliation on their terms. None of it worked. With each manipulation attempt, my resolve strengthened. The contrast between these toxic behaviors and the healthy relationships I was building elsewhere became increasingly obvious. 4 months in, the tone began shifting. Dad's messages became less demanding occasionally, including awkward inquiries about my work. Mom started sending links to articles she thought might interest me without the accompanying guilt trips. Marcus remained hostile, but contacted me less frequently. "They're moving through the stages of grief," Dr. Chen observed during our session. "They're grieving the loss of control over you and the financial support they took for granted. They're beginning to accept that the old dynamic isn't coming back." 5 months after the cutoff, my parents reached out with a tentative olive branch and invitation to meet for coffee at a neutral location. I consulted with Dr. Chen before accepting. "You've established your boundaries," she said. "Now you can test whether they're capable of respecting them. Just remember, reconciliation doesn't mean returning to old patterns." The coffee meeting was awkward but surprisingly civil. Dad didn't mention money once. Mom asked genuine questions about my life. Neither brought up Marcus or his housing situation. At the end, Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We may have been overly focused on Marcus's needs over the years," he admitted, the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from him. "It wasn't perfect, but it was a start." As I drove home, I reflected on the journey of the past 5 months. I'd gone from being the family ATM to establishing genuine independence. I'd lost the version of my family that existed only to extract resources from me, but perhaps I was finding a new version based on more authentic connections. The road ahead would be long and likely bumpy. Old patterns don't disappear overnight. But for the first time, I felt hopeful that real change might be possible, not just in how my family treated me, but in how I valued myself. 6 months after standing my ground against my family's financial demands, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The most visible change was my new home. Not an extravagant statement property like Marcus would have chosen, but a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a pleasant neighborhood with good investment potential. Eliza and I had moved in together, creating the warm, supportive home environment I'd always craved. My professional life flourished, without the constant drain of family financial demands. The client was so pleased with my work on the security system that they extended my contract for another year with a 20% increase. I'd established a small team of developers under my leadership, finding unexpected satisfaction in mentoring others. More importantly, I'd found inner peace. The constant guilt and obligation that had shadowed me for years had lifted. In their place was a quiet confidence in my worth beyond what I could provide materially to others. My relationship with my immediate family remained complex. We'd established a fragile truce based on my non-negotiable boundaries. I would not resume financial support, but I was open to rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. Marcus had experienced the most dramatic life changes. Forced to live within his actual means, he'd finally maintained a job for longer than 6 months, a personal record. He'd moved to a modest apartment and traded in his luxury car. Initially, these changes had fueled his resentment toward me, but recently, I'd noticed something unexpected, a grudging maturity developing in my older brother. Marcus got a promotion, Mom mentioned, during one of our now monthly phone calls. His boss said his improved reliability made the difference. Without me as a financial safety net, Marcus had been forced to develop responsibility and work ethic. He wasn't happy about it, but he was growing in ways that might ultimately benefit him more than any house down payment I could have provided. My parents had begun recognizing their role in creating the unhealthy family dynamic. Dad admitted during a carefully neutral lunch meeting that he'd perhaps leaned too heavily on me over the years. "We got used to you handling things," he said uncomfortably. "Maybe we took advantage of that." Coming from my father, this qualified as a profound apology. Mom was more explicit in her acknowledgement. "I didn't realize how much we were asking of you until we had to manage without your help," she confessed, during a walk around the neighborhood park. "It wasn't fair to put all that on your shoulders." These admissions didn't erase the past, but they created space for a possible future relationship based on something other than financial dependency. My therapy sessions with Dr. Chen continued, though we'd reduced the frequency as I developed stronger boundaries and clearer perspective. The most important thing to understand about family dynamics, she told me during a recent session, is that you can't change others only how you respond to them. By changing your responses, you force the entire system to readjust. Will things ever feel normal with my family? I asked. Define normal, she challenged. If by normal you mean comfortable and easy, probably not anytime soon. But if you mean healthy and balanced, yes, that's possible though. It requires everyone's participation, not just yours. My conversation with Victor after he'd promoted me to team lead provided another perspective on my journey. You know what I noticed about you these past months, he said. You stopped apologizing for taking up space, for having opinions, for being successful. I hadn't realized how much my family's treatment had diminished my professional confidence until it began flourishing in their absence. Success isn't just about talent, Victor continued. It's about believing you deserve it. Your family made you question that. Now you don't anymore. Perhaps the most healing experience was my growing friendship with Caleb and his family. Observing their healthy interactions helped me recognize what had been missing in my own family. They disagreed without manipulation, supported without scorekeeping, and celebrated each other's successes without immediately converting them into obligations. My parents want to know if you and Eliza can come to Thanksgiving, Caleb mentioned casually one day after work. The invitation brought unexpected tears to my eyes. The holiday season had been looming, bringing complicated emotions about family traditions. We'd love to, I said, grateful for the alternative to the tension-filled family obligation meals of my past. 3 weeks later, my parents reached out with their own Thanksgiving invitation. After careful consideration and discussion with Eliza and Dr. Chen, I proposed an alternative. We would join them for dessert after having dinner with friends. The compromise allowed us to maintain connection without sacrificing my boundaries or subjecting ourselves to hours of potential tension. To my surprise, Dad accepted the arrangement without protest. We'll see you at 7 then, he said, adding awkwardly. It'll be good to see you. Both of you. The abbreviated Thanksgiving visit went better than expected. Marcus was subdued, but civil. Mom had prepared my favorite pie. Dad asked genuine questions about my work, without immediately calculating its monetary value. We left after 2 hours, neither elated nor devastated, a realistic outcome for a family in transition. The following week, I met with Dad alone, at his request. We sat at a diner, halfway between our home's neutral territory, for what promised to be a difficult conversation. I've been thinking about our relationship, he began after ordering coffee, about how it changed when you started making good money. I tensed, expecting another financial request disguised as reconciliation. I realize now, he continued, surprising me, that I never gave you the recognition you deserved before that. Your work, your choices, your character. I took them for granted until they translated into something I understood: financial success. The admission hung between us, imperfect, but sincere. That must have hurt you, he added, meeting my eyes directly, for perhaps the first time in our adult relationship. It did, I acknowledged simply. I can't change the past, Dad said. But I'm trying to do better now. Not because you're financially successful, but because you're my son, and I should have done better all along. The conversation wasn't a magical resolution to years of complex family dynamics. Dad still struggled to fully understand my boundaries. He occasionally slipped into old patterns of comparing me to Marcus or measuring worth in financial terms. But he was trying, and that effort itself represented profound change. As the year drew to a close, I reflected on everything that had happened since that family dinner 6 months ago. The journey had been painful, but necessary. By refusing to be the family ATM, I'd not only improved my financial health, but catalyzed growth for everyone involved. My parents were learning to respect boundaries. Marcus was developing responsibility, and I was healing from years of conditional love and unbalanced expectations. The process wasn't complete. Real healing rarely follows a neat linear path. There would be setbacks, old patterns, reasserting themselves, new boundaries to establish. But for the first time, I felt hopeful about the possibility of authentic family relationships, ones based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. My experience had taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is refuse to enable their dysfunction, even when that refusal comes at the cost of temporary peace. True love seeks the growth and well-being of the other, not their comfortable stagnation. As Eliza and I decorated our first Christmas tree in our new home, I felt profound gratitude for the journey, difficult though it had been. By valuing myself enough to say no to exploitation, I had created space for genuine connections to develop with my family if they chose to participate, and with the chosen family, I was building around me. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your success? Comment below and let me know if you've faced similar situations and how you handled them. Your experiences might help others navigating these challenging waters. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more stories about maintaining healthy boundaries and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect yourself from financial exploitation, even when it comes from family. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your success belongs to you first.